I think on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we're still on chapter, well, I don't know, page 765, at the houses of Balaram and Girish. And I think, if I remember correctly, I'm about down halfway down the page on 765. Again, Sri Ramakrishna went into samadhi. After regaining consciousness of the outer world, he returned to his seat. Turning to M, he said, "I don't remember which way I was facing before." Then he began to talk to the devotees. Narendra to the master, "Hazra has now become a good man." Master, "I don't know. There are people who repeat Rama's name with their tongues, but hide stones under their arms to throw at others." Narendra, "I don't agree with you, sir. I asked him about the things people complain of. He denied them." Master, "He is steadfast in his devotions. He practices japa a little, but he also behaves in a queer way. He doesn't pay the coachman his fare." Narendra, "That isn't true, sir. He said he paid it." Master, "Where did he get the money?" Narendra, "From Ramlal or someone else." Master, "Did you ask him all these things in detail?" Once I prayed to Divine Mother, "O Mother, if Hazra is a hypocrite, then please remove him from here." Later on, I told him of my prayer. After a few days, he came to me and said, "You see, I'm still here." The master and the others laughed. But soon afterwards, he left. Hazra's mother begged me through Ramlal to ask Hazra to come home. She was almost blind with weeping. I tried in various ways to persuade him to visit her. I said, "Your mother is old. Go and see her once." I couldn't make him go. Afterwards, the poor mother died weeping for him. Narendra, "This time he will go home." Master, yes, he will go home. He is a rogue. He is a rascal. You don't understand him. You are a fool. Gopal said that Hazra stayed at Cynthia a few days. People used to supply him with butter, rice, and other food. He had the impudence to tell them he couldn't swallow such coarse rice and bad butter. Ishan of Bhatpara accompanied him there. He ordered Ishan to carry water for him. That made the other Brahmins very angry. Narendra, I asked him about that too. He said that Ishan Babu had himself come forward with the water. Besides, many Brahmins of Bhatpara showed him respect. Master smiling, that was the result of his japa and austerity. You see, physical traits to a great extent influence character. Short stature and a body with dents here and there are not good traits. Oh dear. People with such traits take a long time to acquire spiritual knowledge. Bhavana, let us stop talking about these things. Master, don't misunderstand me. To Narendra, you say you understand people. That is why I'm telling you all this. Do you know how I look on people like Hazra? I know that just as God takes the form of holy men, he also takes the form of cheats and rogues. To Mahimacharan, what do you say? All are God? Mahima, yes, sir, all are God. Girish to the master, sir, what is a kanji prema? Master, it means one-sided love. For instance, the water does not seek the duck, but the duck loves water. There are other kinds of love. Sadarani, Samanjasa, Samartha. In the first, which is ordinary love, The lover seeks his own happiness. He doesn't care whether the other person is happy or not. That was Chandravali's attitude toward Krishna. In the second, which is a compromise, both seek each other's happiness. This is a noble kind of love. But the third kind is the highest of all. Such a lover says to his beloved, "Be happy yourself, whatever may happen to me." Radha had this highest love. She was happy in Krishna's happiness. The gopis too had attained this exalted state. Do you know who the gopis were? Ramchandra was wandering in the forest where 60,000 rishis dwelt. They were very eager to see him. He cast a tender glance at them. According to a certain Purana, they were later born as the gopis of Vrindavan. A devotee. Sir, who may be called Antaranga? Master, let me give an illustration. A Nat Mandir has pillars inside and outside, and Antaranga is like the inside pillows. Those who always live near the Guru are the Antarangas. To Mahimacharan, the Jnani wants neither a form of God nor his incarnations. While wandering in the forest, Ramchandra saw a number of rishis. He welcomed them to his ashram. They welcomed him to their ashram with great love and said to him, "O Rama, today our life is blessed because we have seen you. But we know you are the son of Dasharatha. Bhaja and other sages call you a divine incarnation, but that is not our view. We meditate on the indivisible Satchidananda." Rama was pleased with them and smiled. Ah, what a state of mind I passed through. My mind would lose itself in the indivisible absolute. How many days I spent that way. I renounced bhakti and bhakta, devotion and devotee. I became inert. I could not feel the form of my own hand. I was about to die. I thought of keeping Ramlal's aunt near me. That was Sarada Devi. I ordered the removal of all pictures and portraits from my room. When I regained outer consciousness, when the mind climbed down to the ordinary level, I felt as if I were being suffocated like a drowning person. At last I said to myself, if I can't bear people, then how shall I live? Then my mind was again directed to bhakti and bhakta. What has happened to me? I kept asking people. Bholanath said to me, this state of mind has been described in the Mahabharata. How can a man live on coming down from the plane of samadhi? Surely he requires devotion to God in the company of devotees. Otherwise, how will he keep his mind occupied? Mahimacharan to the master. Sir, can a man from the plane of samadhi go to the plane of the ordinary world? Master, in a low voice to Mahima, I shall tell you privately. You are the only one fit to hear it. Kaur Singh also asked me that question. You see, there's a vast difference between Jiva and Ishvara. Through worship and austerity, a Jiva can, at the utmost, attain samadhi, but he cannot come down from that state. On the other hand, an incarnation of God can come down from samadhi. A Jiva is like an Jiva is like an officer of the king. He can go as far as the outer court of the 7-story palace, but the king's son has access to all the 7 floors. He can also go outside. Everybody says that no one can retain from the plane of samadhi. In that case, how do you account for sages like Shankara and Ramanuja. They retained the ego of knowledge. Mahima, that is true indeed. Otherwise, how could they write books? Master, again, there are the instances of sages like Prahlada, Narada, and Hanuman. They too retained bhakti after attaining samadhi. Mahima, that is true, sir. Master, some people indulge in philosophical speculation and think much of themselves. Perhaps they've studied a little Vedanta, but a man cannot be egotistic if he has true knowledge. In other words, in samadhi, a man becomes one with God and gets rid of his egotism. True knowledge is impossible without samadhi. In samadhi, man becomes one with God. Then he can have no egotism. Do you know what it is like? Just at noon, the sun is directly overhead. If you look around then, you do not see your shadow. Likewise, you will not find the shadow of ego after attaining knowledge, samadhi. But if you see in anyone a trace of I consciousness after the attainment of true knowledge, then know that it is either the ego of knowledge or the ego of devotion or the servant ego. It is not the ego of ignorance. Again, jnana and bhakti are twin paths. Whichever you follow, it is God that you will ultimately reach. The jnani looks on God in one way, and the bhakta looks on him in another way. The God of the jnani is full of brilliance, and the God of the bhakta full of sweetness. Bhavanat was seated near the master listening to these words. Bhavanat to the master, Sir, I have a question to ask. I don't quite understand the Chandi. It is written there that the Divine Mother kills all beings. What does that mean? Master, this is all her leela, her sportive pleasure. That question used to bother me too. Later I found out that all is Maya. Both creation and destruction are God's Maya. Girish conducted Sri Ramakrishna, I'm going to sneeze, excuse me. Everything is in bloom in Santa Barbara, and I have allergies. Girish conducted Sri Ramakrishna and the devotees to the roof where the meal was served. There was a bright moon in the sky. The devotees took their seats. The master occupied a seat in front of them. All were in a joyous mood. Sri Ramakrishna was beside himself with joy at the sight of Narendra. The beloved disciple sat in the front row. Every now and then, the master asked how he was getting along. He had hardly finished half his meal when he came to Narendra with some watermelon sherbet and curd from his own plate. Tenderly, he said to the disciple, "Please eat this." Then he went back to his own place. Saturday, May 9th, 1885. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Sri Ramakrishna sat in Balaram's drawing room in a happy mood. Many devotees were present. Narendra, M., Bhavanat, Purna, Paltu, the younger Narayan, Girish, Ram, Binod, Dvija, and others sat around him. Balaram was not there. He had gone to Mongir for a change of air. His eldest daughter had invited Sri Ramakrishna and the devotees and celebrated the occasion with a feast. The master was resting after the meal. Again and again the master asked M, "Am I liberal-minded? Tell me." Bhavanat, smiling, "Why do you ask him? He will only keep quiet." A beggar entered the room. He wanted to sing. The devotees listened to a song or two. Narendra liked his singing and asked him to sing more. Master, "Stop. Stop. We don't want any more songs. Where is the money? To Narendra, you may order the music, but who will pay? A devotee smiling, Sir, the beggar may think you are an Amir, a wealthy aristocrat, the way you are leaning against that big pillow. All laugh. Master smiling, he may also think I'm ill. The conversation drifted to Hazra and his egotism. For some reason, he had to go away from Dakshineshwar. Narendra. Hazra now admits he was egotistic. Master, don't believe him. He says so in order to come back to Dakshineshwar. To the devotees, Narendra always insists that Hazra is a grand person. Narendra, even now I say so. Master, why? You have heard so much about him and still you think so. Narendra, he has slight defects, but many virtues. Master, I admit that he has devotion to his ideal. He said to me, you don't care for me now, but later you will be seeking my company. A Goswami came from Srirampur. He was a descendant of Advaita Goswami. He intended to spend a night or two in the temple garden. I asked him very cordially to stay. Do you know what Hazra said to me? Send him to the temple officer. What was in his mind was that the Goswami might ask for milk or food, and that he might have to give him some from his own share. I said to Hazra, now you rogue, even I prostrate myself before him because he is a Goswami. And you, after leading a worldly life and indulging a great deal in lust and greed, have so much pride because of a little japa? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? One realizes God through sattva. Rajas and tamas take one away from him. The scriptures describe sattva as white, rajas as red, and tamas as black. Once I said to Hazra, tell me what you think of the people that come here. How much sattva does each one have? He said, Narendra has 100%, and I have 110%. What about me, I asked, and he said, you still have a trace of pink. You have only 75%, I should say. All laughed. Hazra used to practice japa at Dakshineshwar. While telling his beads, he would also try to do a little brokerage business. He has a debt of a few thousand rupees, which he must clear up. About the Brahmin cooks of the temple, he remarked, do you think I talk with people of that sort? The truth is that you cannot attain God if you have even a trace of desire. Subtle is the way of Dharma. If you're trying to thread a needle, you will not succeed if the thread has even a slightest fiber sticking out. There are people who perform japa for 30 years and still do not attain any result. Why? A gangrenous sore requires very drastic treatment. Ordinary medicine won't cure it. No matter how much sadhana you practice, you will not realize the goal as long as you have desire. But this also is true, that one can realize the goal in a moment through the grace of God, through his kindness. Take the case of a room that has been dark 1,000 years. If somebody suddenly brings a lamp into it, the room is lighted in an instant. Suppose a poor man's son has fallen into the good graces of a rich person. He marries his daughter. Immediately he gets an equipage, clothes, furniture, a house, and other things. A devotee, Sir, how does one receive God's grace? Master, God has the nature of a child. A child is sitting with gems in the skirt of his cloth. Many a person passes by him along the road. Many of them pray to him for gems, but he hides the gems with his hands and says, turning away his face, no, I will not give away any. But another man comes along. He doesn't ask for the gems, and yet the child runs after him and offers him the gems, begging him to accept them. One cannot realize God without renunciation. Who will accept my words? I have been seeking a companion, a sympathetic soul who will understand my feelings. When I see a great devotee, I say to myself, perhaps he will accept my ideal. But later on, I find that he behaves in a different way. A ghost sought a companion. One becomes a ghost if one dies from an incident on a Saturday or a Tuesday. So whenever the ghost found someone who seemed to be dying from an accident on either of these days, he would run to him. He would say to himself that at last he had found his companion. But no sooner would he run to the man than he would see the man getting up. The man perhaps had fallen from a roof, and after a few moments regained consciousness. Once Mathur Babu was in an ecstatic mood. He behaved like a drunkard and could not look after his work. At this, all said, who will look after his estate if he behaves like that? Certainly the young priest has cast a spell upon him. They meant Ramakrishna. During one of Narendra's early visits, I touched his chest and he became unconscious. Regaining consciousness, he wept and said, "Oh, why did you do that to me? I have a father, I have a mother. This I and mine spring from ignorance." A guru said to his disciple, "The world is illusory. Come away with me." "But revered sir," said the disciple, "my people at home, my father, my mother, my wife, love me so much. How can I give them up?" The guru said, "No doubt you now have this feeling of I and mine and say that they love you. But this is all an illusion of your mind. I shall teach you a trick, and you will know whether they love you truly or not." Saying this, the teacher gave the disciple a pill and said to him, "Swallow this at home. You will appear to be a corpse, but you will not lose consciousness. You will see everything and hear everything. Then I shall come to your house, and gradually you will regain your normal state." The disciple followed the teacher's instructions and lay on his bed like a dead person. The house was filled with loud wailing. His mother, his wife, and the others lay on the ground weeping bitterly. Just then the Brahmin entered the house and said to them, "What is the matter with you?" "This boy is dead," they replied. The Brahmin felt his pulse and said, "How is that?" "No, he is not dead. I have a medicine for him that will cure him completely." The joy of the relatives was unbounded. It seemed to them that heaven itself had come down into their house. "But," said the Brahmin, "I must tell you something else. Another person must take some of this medicine first, and then the boy must swallow the rest. But the other person will die. I see he has so many dear relatives here. One of them will certainly agree to take the medicine. I see his wife and his mother crying bitterly. Surely they will not hesitate to take it." At once, the weeping stopped and all sat quiet. The mother said, "Well, this is a big family. Suppose I die. Then who will look after the family?" She fell into a reflective mood. The wife, who had been crying a minute before and bemoaning her ill luck, said, "Well, he has gone the way of mortals. I have these 2 or 3 young children. Who will look after them if I die?" The disciple saw and heard everything. He stood up once and said to the teacher, "Let us go, revered sir. I will follow you." All laughed. Another disciple said to his teacher, "Revered sir, my wife takes great care of me. It is for her sake that I cannot give up the world. The disciple practiced Hatha Yoga. The teacher taught him too a trick to test his wife's love. One day there was a great wailing in his house. The neighbors came running and saw the Hatha Yoga seated in a posture, his limbs paralyzed and distorted. They thought he was dead. His wife fell on the ground weeping piteously. "Oh, what has befallen me? How have you provided for our future? Oh, friends, I never dreamt I should meet such a fate." In the meantime, the relatives and friends had brought a cot to take the corpse out. But suddenly a difficulty arose as they started to move it. Since the body was twisted and stiff, it could not be taken out through the door. A neighbor quickly brought an axe and began to chop away the door frame. The wife was crying bitterly. When she heard the sound of the axe, she ran to the door. "What are you doing, friend?" she asked, still weeping. The neighbors said, "We can't take the body out, so we are chopping away the door frame." "Please," said the wife, "don't do any such thing. I am a widow now. I have no one to look after me. I have to bring up these young children. If you destroy this door, I shall not be able to replace it." Friends, death is inevitable for all, and my husband cannot be called back to life. You had better cut his limbs. The Hatha yogi at once stood up. The effect of the medicine had worn off. He said to his wife, "You evil one, you want to cut off my hands and feet, do you?" So saying, he renounced home and followed his teacher. All laughed. Many women make a show of grief, knowing beforehand that they will have to weep. They first take off their nose rings and other ornaments, put them securely in a box, and lock it. Then they fall on the ground and weep. "Oh, friends, what has befallen us?" Narendra, how can I believe without proof that God incarnates himself as a man? Girish, faith alone is sufficient. What is the proof that these objects exist here? Faith alone is the proof. A devotee, have philosophers been able to prove that the eternal world exists outside us? But they say we have an irresistible belief in it. Girish to Narendra, you wouldn't believe even if God appeared before you. God himself might say that he was God born as a man, but perhaps you would say that he was a liar and a cheat. The conversation turned to the immortality of the gods. Narendra, what is the proof of their immortality? Girish, you wouldn't believe it even if the gods appeared before you. Narendra, that the immortals existed in the past requires proof. M whispered something to Paltu. Paltu, smiling to Narendra, what need is there for the immortals to be without beginning? To be immortal, one need only be without end. Master, smiling, Narendra is the son of a lawyer, but Paltu of a deputy magistrate. All laughed. All kept silent for a while. I think we will stop there at the top of the pages 772. Any questions or any comments on what we have read?
What is a Goswami?
A Goswami, it's a certain Brahmin caste within a caste.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Krishna Prana, I had a question. This is like coming down from all this high thoughts, but why was Narendra so taken by Hasra? I just don't quite understand. He was, such a rational kind of person, and
who knows? I mean,
yeah.
Can any of us explain why you're drawn to one person more than another person? I mean, it's absolutely inexplicable. It could be you look at it and you think, okay, it could be familiarity from a past life. Some people you walk in, you know them immediately.
Yeah.
Other people it takes getting to know. And Hazra and Narendra hit it off.
Yeah, right.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
It was just that way. So, any other questions or comments? I've often wondered myself. But, yeah.
It really makes no difference, but anyway.
I know. Well, as Ramakrishna said, it's all the play of the Divine Mother, her sportive play, her sportive pleasure, even that. Yeah. Okay. So we will close with the chant. Om Hari Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.